School teacher in Elk Grove, California. I'm also a national faculty for the Buck Institute for Education and a National Geographic Fellow. I'm in a hotel room tonight in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, preparing for a week-long professional development with teachers from throughout the country. We'll be working on how to embed project-based learning in the form of geoinquiry in their classrooms. I use your video, the talk that you gave about teachers being gardeners, in my Buck Institute trainings with teachers. You compared teachers to gardeners, and you said that great teachers know the conditions on how to promote growth in students. So my question is this: who's responsible for creating the conditions of growth in our teachers? What are those ideal conditions for teachers to grow and engage in transformative teaching? And how do we convince veteran and new teachers to take risks and to innovate and to embrace not just the successes, but the failures and reflection as a way to grow as educators? Thank you for taking time to answer my question.
Thank you, Jim. It's a fantastic question. It's a whole day's conversation, isn't it? But let me just say a couple of quick things about it. As I see it, the role of teachers is to create the conditions in classrooms or in wherever they are, or studios, or wherever the teaching's happening, that will facilitate students' learning. And sometimes that can be through direct instruction, sometimes it's in group work, sometimes it's through practical projects. Great teachers have a repertoire of techniques and strategies that they practice and acquire over time, like any great profession. It's connoisseurship, it's knowing what might work here in this situation. That's the role of a teacher, to create that kind of climate for students. If you're in a conventional school, as I said, it's part of a bigger ecosystem. So to answer Jim's question, the role of a principal in a school is critically important, because the role of the principal is to create conditions in the school culture where teachers can do that. To create the environment where teachers can work together, they can collaborate, and they can be part of a common enterprise within the school and the community. Around that, there is the school district in our system here. And the role of the superintendent, I think, and of the board, is to create conditions where schools can do that, where schools can collaborate. There are some countries, by the way, which can point to. Finland is often pointed to as a good example of that. But creating conditions at the district level is the role of the board, not a command and control role. I'll just come back to before I've done. And at the state level, the role of the state legislatures is to create conditions where districts can do that. So it's an ecosystem, but all of that has to be focused on enabling this relationship between the teachers and the students. So the short answer to you, Jim, is that this is a big enterprise. There's no reason to delay it, but there's no reason to expect it's going to happen overnight. You have to start creating conditions where you are. But where this movement matters so much is the people who can most help teachers learn their craft and practice that craft and deepen it is the community of teachers. Veterans working with new teachers working alongside the veterans, not only in the school, but with organizations like the CSU system. Creating the conditions for collaboration is both possible and necessary, and I think that's where this begins. Can we have the next question?
I'm from San Diego, California, but this summer I've been spending a lot of time up here in my parents' pottery studio, and it's been making me think about the way I use space in my classroom. I've also been reading this great book called The Space, and between those two things I've been thinking a lot about how I can use the space that I have in my classroom to promote creativity for my students and promote production of their work. And so I think in schools our classroom spaces are very fixed, and they're the hardest thing to change about school because they're literally built decades ago and sometimes won't be changed for decades since. And I'm wondering what Sir Ken might have to say about the way we can leverage our existing classroom spaces to promote more creativity and creative production from our students.
Well, thank you, Jen. It's right. It is difficult to knock down entire buildings. So it's a two-part answer to this, really. One of them is that if you're building new schools, there is an opportunity to reconfigure conceptually how the building operates. The school structure, the classroom, is often referred to as the third teacher, and it's a very important part. The physical environment in which people work has a deep effect on the culture of the organization. I think of culture as habits and habitats. It's the routines and rhythms that people practice in their particular institution, but it's also the physical space. There are some wonderful examples online of innovative designs for buildings. There's a whole movement developing here of of designers, architects, builders, and others who are reconceiving what schools look like. You may work in some of them, but if you're not in a new school, then you have to look at the building that you've got. And there's still a lot, I think, that can be done. You know, school systems we've become used to particular sorts of layouts, particular sorts of furniture, particular arrangements of furniture. Just reconfiguring the furniture is the first thing that we can think about, or even getting rid of it in some spaces. The decor of the building is so important. I mean, you know, I was in a school a while back, just down by LAX, and it was a concrete bunker, essentially. But when you went inside, it felt like an Aladdin's cave. The energy in the space, it had the kids' work up, it had the teachers' work up, it had the parents' work up. You really got a sense that this was a place where learning happened and creativity and imagination was actively encouraged. So the decor is important. And that certainly is available, like in your own house. There are things you can do to reconfigure the space. There's also, by the way, I mean, I'm by no means any kind of expert in it, but I remember doing a lot of work in Hong Kong years back. And you know, in Asian cultures, I always get the pronunciation wrong, but some of you will correct me probably. There's this whole principle of feng shui, where the energy of the space can be changed by the physical reconfiguration of the objects in the space and the way the space is decorated, or even the way the furniture is pointing. So there's a lot that can be done to reconfigure spaces and make them more congenial to learning, you know, apart from having to build a place from scratch. And I think it's a very important part, because you know, if you walk into a particular space, you get a mood and a feeling immediately, you know, if it's a lab, or if it's an art studio, or if it's a regular classroom. And I think Jen raised a very important point. Reconfiguring the environment, the physical environment, is a key part of the transformation of learning. Do I have the next question?
Privilege of working with an amazing group of educators teaching at our middle school, Rancho Lab School. Thinking about our lab school and our students and what educators need to know about how to prepare our students for their future, I'm wondering, Sir Ken, what advice would you give new educators joining our profession?
There's a lot of advice, I'm sure you'd all share in this as well. I think the first thing is it's a difficult profession. You know that. I mean, famously, it's very hard to become not only great, but proficient at teaching. It's a very complex and demanding profession, dealing with so many people, so many rival demands. So I think it's important that people entering the profession maintain their idealism. I mean, I've tried to do that. I know most people who are passionate about education do their very best to do that. And keep your eye on the ball. You're there to help students. You're not there to just to fulfill mandates. Your role is to keep focused on that, the quality of learning. That it's a difficult job, it's demanding, and you'll have good days and bad days. The second thing is, though, that this is a job that people get better at. That there are skills, techniques, that there are instincts that you develop through experience that you can cultivate. And as long as a professional, you see yourself that way. Not, as somebody once said, you know, that there are, like in all professions, there are some people with 20 years experience and some people with 1 year's experience repeated 20 times. And being in the business of your own personal growth and development is critical. Learning from other teachers, being prepared to be humble in the face of people with more experience, with techniques they've learned, and also to study your craft in the way that other professions do. I'm very keen that we should see education for the profession that it is, and that means recognizing that there's a lot to learn right the way through your career in education, from other disciplines, from how people teach different sorts of groups. It really is a never-ending program of self-development, properly conceived. The other thing I would say is that no matter how passionate you are as an educator, it's not the only thing you do. You have family, community commitments, and also it's very important that you develop your own talents and refresh yourself. It can be, with the best will in the world, a very draining occupation, and you do need time to feed yourself, to feed your own spirit. And that's part of what I do talk about in creative schools here, that it's, you know, if you travel in aeroplanes, you know, they always say this, put your own mask on first. And I think you have to pay attention to your own personal growth and development, because the more fulfilled and rounded you feel you are, more content in your own skills, the more likely it is, I think, that you're going to contribute to the kind of learning that your students need. And the last thing is, don't stop being a student. You know, you don't know everything, you never will, nobody ever does, and you've got as much to learn from your students as they have to learn from you. See it as a conversation rather than a monologue, and I think you'll be astonished and rewarded by the benefits that you'll get from that. I think that's the last question because we're going to go into your next thing. But thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it.